I want to talk about something that happened before the show and get some closure on something we talked about last week, courtesy of a voicemail from loyal RFR listener Nathan. And Nathan asked us a question about Attack of the Clones and the moment Yoda was sensing the presence of Qui-Gon Jinn. At the same moment, Anakin Skywalker was killing a bunch of Tuskens in cold blood. So let's jump back to our voicemail from last week and hear what Nathan had to say.
When Anakin saves his mother and then she dies and he kills all the Tusken Raiders, there's a bit where it cuts to Yoda meditating and you hear Qui-Gon's voice going, Anakin, Anakin, no! At this point, the camera's on Yoda, so I wonder, who is hearing that voice? Is Yoda hearing Qui-Gon through the Force? Or is that Qui-Gon speaking to Anakin as he's, going to slaughter the Tusken Raiders? Or is it from the audience perspective that only we can hear Qui-Gon calling out through the Force and Yoda can't communicate with him yet?
I've been giving this a lot of thought. I had my answer, but it's been weighing on me because I feel like there's got to be a canonical answer on this.
The thing that drives me the craziest about this whole situation is it's clearly not Liam Neeson saying no.
That's the biggest sin. That's the biggest crime in all this.
I mean, George Lucas just had the biggest set of cojones to pull this off, to play this. Play the audio, Jason.
Anakin! Anakin!
No! I mean, George had such a set to play this in the film and think we wouldn't notice. That is clearly not Liam Neeson. Anakin, no! I love it.
Even you sound more like Liam Neeson with your no, and you're trying not to sound like him in that. Where'd they find this guy?
Oh yeah, sure. You no. Okay.
That's what they could have done. They could have taken something like that. I mean, look, they got Obi-Wan Kenobi to say, or, Alec Guinness to say Rey by cutting up the dialogue. Are you telling me that there's no prior recordings of Liam Neeson saying anything like no? It's a pretty common word.
They just could have had him do it over the phone or something. That would have been closer to reality than the one we get in the final product.
That wasn't when he got into that motorcycle accident, was it?
No, no. That actually, that interfered with, from what we understand, that interfered with him appearing in Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith.
So that would have been several years later.
Okay, all right.
But so I did some digging, and I figured I'd go to the novelization first.
Yeah.
So we have a segment here from Chapter 20 of the Attack of the Clones audiobook. This is narrated by Jonathan Davis. And this is from the novelization, the very moment when Yoda was meditating right before Mace walked in. And by the way, props to Sam Jackson for the cool way he swung around to sit on that little stool there. That was like the coolest swing around to sit there and talk to a puppet that I think any actor could have achieved. But I'm getting distracted. This is from the audiobook as Yoda was meditating.
Deep in his meditations, peering through the dark side, Master Yoda felt a sudden surge of anger, of outrage beyond control. The diminutive master's eyes popped open wide at the overwhelming strength of that rage. And then he heard a voice, a familiar voice, crying, "No, no, Anakin, no, don't, no!" It was Qui-Gon. Yoda knew that it was Qui-Gon, but Qui-Gon was dead, had become one with the Force. One could not retain consciousness and sense of self in that state. One could not speak from beyond the grave. But Yoda had heard the ghostly call, and in his deep meditative state, his thoughts focused as precisely as they had ever been. The Jedi Master knew that he had not been mistaken. He wanted to focus on that then, perhaps to try to follow that call back to the ghostly source, but he could not.
Okay. All right.
So it's left kind of open to interpretation right there.
Yeah.
A good bit. I mean, so what we do know, though, is Yoda believes he heard the voice of Qui-Gon.
Yes.
But he's not really sure if
he's doubting
that
it.
was maybe maybe his mind playing tricks, or
Right.
it could have been the wind chimes outside the Jedi Temple. Who knows? What I notice differently, though, about the novelization compared to the final film is what Qui-Gon is saying in that Force audio experience, where he doesn't say, Anakin, Anakin, no. He says, no, Anakin, no, don't, no. So I tried to make it more like the film. Jonathan Davis, I don't think, had seen the film by the time he was recording this. Otherwise,
probably
he would have been
not
more authentic in his read. But so the novelization leaves it open to interpretation, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. What I'm starting to believe here in this is that, and I'm not going to bring up the worlds thing with the world between worlds and all of that. but I do. What I think that is it can be a metaphor for this idea that everything within the Force is connected. Everything's connected within the Force. And so if you think of it like, the highway system, you got big long stretches of highways and they branch off and they do all this. Well, that's all sort of like feeding back into and sort of in some ways, I think, making up the Force itself. And in the Davis, there wasn't any evidence to suggest that Yoda was specifically thinking of Anakin, because he had sent Anakin on this mission. So was he specifically trying to reach out to Anakin, or was he just meditating and this happened to be the loudest station on the dial because Anakin was utilizing so much Force, well, really dark side of the Force, so much hate? That's the one thing that I'm kind of struggling with. Once you figure that out, it doesn't really. It's like you got Qui-Gon inside the Force, looking outward into the physical universe, keeping an eye on Anakin, and then you got Yoda from the outside peering inside. It's like they're kind of meeting in the middle. Now I'm conjuring up Whoopi Goldberg and Patrick Swayze meeting together in Ghost. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but somehow they're finding one another inadvertently. But whether or not Yoda was kind of keeping tabs on Anakin, or it just happened to be that was such a vergence, I guess we could say, in the Force. Maybe vergence isn't the right word, but it was a big moment within the Force.
It's like a seismic shift.
In
the Force, in the actual balance of the Force itself.
Yeah.
And if you want to think about tuning into, I like how you put it, the loudest station on the dial.
Yeah.
What if Yoda was like tuning around and stuff? He tunes in like a Polish polka or something. He's like, no, I'm trying to be real here. And he's just getting nothing but polka music.
Yeah, or it's from Kiadi Mundi dropping a deuce in the bathroom down the hall, Like you gotta
Or the pain of Yarl Poof bumping his head in the doorway yet again. Oh, I need something that I can sink my teeth into here. But it's the Force that controls all of this, and I'll tell you why I know this is because we've seen it happen a few times when there are moments of mass destruction and many lives get lost, like the destruction of Alderaan. All of a sudden, Obi-Wan, he's trying to train the kid, and he has to sit down. He gets all woozy, like, oh, man. And he's not even trying to reach out necessarily to Alderaan at that moment. It's just, like you said, the loudest station on the dial. And that's what happened here with Yoda. And the fact that Yoda is personally connected to Anakin Skywalker makes it more intense, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
Yeah, but it's fun to break it all down. Now that we've done that, let's figure out what it really is. Courtesy of the maker himself, George Lucas. George does address this on the Attack of the Clones commentary track.
We cut to Yoda, who is meditating, who hears this off screen, and we do hear a voice in there, and that voice is the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn.
Anakin! Anakin! No!
So we very subtly establish that in this rather intense emotional connection that Yoda is feeling the pain and suffering of Anakin and the Tusken Raiders, he's also making a connection unwittingly with Qui-Gon Jinn. And up to this point, we haven't really established that you can make a connection with the departed in this world. And that will become a factor in the next one. Lots of issues sort of come out of that, but this is the very beginning of that Yoda making a connection with Qui-Gon Jinn in the middle of Anakin's pain.
Promises made, promises not kept, George? In fact, they don't really deal with it at all in the theatrical release, certainly, of Revenge of the Sith. It was one of those plot points that I think George just ran out of time.
Yeah, outside of Yoda, Yoda figures it out, and he deals with it, but we as an audience aren't privy to all of that.
No.
Teach you how to communicate with them, I will. Yes. It's like, well, wait a second. That's a pretty important thing. We've been thinking about this really since Luke Skywalker was making the trench run on the Death Star in the original film, and he heard the voice of Obi-Wan. And then the 6 films come and go, and it really doesn't get addressed. And that's a bummer.
It is a bummer.
That's a real loose end. That's a real loose end. Now, granted, of course, they did attack it a little bit in the Clone Wars, in the animated show, in the 6th season. But still, it's not as much like spelling out. I want to know exactly how,
Yeah.
I want to know how. And it's just the only thing is that I think canonically we've been led to believe that it is some shaman who taught Qui-Gon how to achieve life after death. And he studied under this guy, this unknown shaman. And that's a story yet to have been told as well.
I was thinking about this idea of, multiple people reaching out at the same time. And I'm thinking about Empire Strikes Back when Luke is hanging upside down on Cloud City, and Leia is reaching out. He reaches out to Leia. They establish a connection. And what if Vader got involved in that? Because Vader right after starts reaching out to Luke. Like, I was thinking about this. Like, does this mean you can have like 3-way calling? Is that's essentially what Yoda, Anakin, and Qui-Gon had? And so Leia's reaching out to Luke, and she hears Vader's voice. Like, that would be wild.
Yeah. It's like a party line gone totally awry. But it would be funny too, because he says, son, father, son. And then Leia gets on, daughter. What? No. Son. Wait.
Credits.
Father, daughter, son. Yeah, right. And what? Yeah, the last word we hear in Empire Strikes Back is, huh?
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. Directed by George Lucas. Or Irvin Kershner. Irvin Kershner. Let's be accurate here. Come on. Devotion and accuracy.
Well, that's definitely an interesting one. I mean, I don't think that what George says necessarily upsets, my apple cart. I think that it's obvious what its purpose was, and George does a great job of describing, sort of the shorthand of what he was accomplishing there. But then there's all this extrapolations that we as fans want to take out of it. Well, what does that actually mean? And but I think at the end of the day, I take that as the moment when Yoda first got the notion, and maybe it was something he had read about in ancient texts, that there was a belief that this was possible, but I like to think that he didn't believe it was possible until then. That's when he realized that there might be something to this, and then off screen, he's working on it, trying to create a connection. And by the time we get to the end of Revenge of the Sith, he's established that connection with Qui-Gon.
Yeah, it's almost like being proved something from your faith is 100% legitimate, and
Right.
you've experienced it. It could be something along those lines.
That's a great question.
Pretty
Thank you,
interesting,
Nathan,
though.
for that.
It is a great question, and the answer is that, according to George Lucas, that was Yoda hearing the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yes.
So that's that.
Right.
And it wasn't used as a sort of a device for us as an audience or anything like that. I mean, ultimately it was, but
Sure, everything is, but it wasn't
in a very subtle way.
It was literal. He was literally hearing the voice of Qui-Gon. It wasn't any kind of abstract thing at all. It was literal.